So when starting a car audio build project, probably one of the hardest things to do is to start. But I'm going to tell you the order of things that I like to do whenever I'm trying to figure out a new project. The first thing I want to do is take a wide picture. I want to look at the entire thing as a whole. It's all nice and blurry, no details, just a big picture. So what do I foresee in the future? What do I want to create? What's my destination as a whole? Am I wanting this to be something that's going to be really loud? Am I wanting it to sound awesome? Am I wanting both? Am I trying to achieve a theater experience, concert experience, or do I want it to sound like I'm wearing a pair of headphones? I try to wrap my head around the big picture first. And then once I've decided on the big picture, then I start moving in for the kill. So the things that are in common, no matter what kind of build you do, there are certain elements that will always be present. So I've decided on where I want to go, and I know my budget. Now, for me personally, my very next step is to decide on a head unit. Am I going to keep the factory head unit because it does all the things? Maybe there's not any kits available to replace it. It's going to require a lot of customization to make it work. So I want to keep it, right? Maybe it's integrated in such a way that I want to keep it. So then I know that I'm going to be keeping the head unit, and I know that I need to move past that. If I'm going to replace it, then I go looking for kits. Find the right kits, find the right head unit that gives me the features that I want. Has a good review, lots of good 4 and 5 star reviews, reputable, or whatever falls within my budget. But either way, those two things still, the rest of the options come no matter which way you choose. Looking for an amplifier. So I know if I'm going with an SQ system, I don't need a ton of power. I just need 50 to 100 watts per channel. That's all it really takes to build a nice SQ system and get pretty darn loud. So I say, okay, well, do I want a DSP? And that's almost always going to be a yes. A digital signal processor will allow you to do things like sum all your head unit into where it's 2 channels, to where you can get a proper signal out to your speakers. It'll allow you to time alignment so that it sounds like you're in the center of the sound field instead of over on one side. It allows you to do full equalization of every individual speaker so that you can get the proper frequencies out of each individual speaker and have everything doing its job and its job only. That means it can do it the best. Many other tricks as well. The DSP is a must. Now, do I want to get a DSP built into an amplifier? Maybe. In most situations, I would say DSP separate, because that way you can change amplifiers and use the same DSP. However, in some cases, you might be able to find a good amplifier with a really good DSP in it that will still be a reasonable price even if you decide to replace the amplifier and just use the DSP portion in the future. Most of your DSP amps will have a pass-through. So you can, if you decide you need more of whatever, you can put more amplifiers in, so use that original amp DSP as your DSP. And you could still use it to drive tweeters or to drive surround speakers or whatever, something you don't need a lot of power on. So it's going to maintain its usefulness. I always look to things to maintain the usefulness. Okay, see, I don't want to have to replace anything. I want to add to if I change. I don't want to replace, add to. I want to be able to utilize every piece of equipment I have, no matter how far I go in the build. So that can work, especially if you know you're going for an SQ setup. If you know you're going for an SPL setup, you're going full balls to the walls, loud. Don't bother. Get you a DSP and separate amplifiers to power your channels, because you know you're going to be skipping that step way beyond. And there's no point in spending a little bit of extra money to make that an amp DSP combo when you could just get a DSP and get the amp that you need for the big, loud volume. But my next step is going to be my mid and highs amp and my DSP, whether it be the same or two separate units. That's always going to be a thing. No matter which way you go in the build, that's going to be the step you take. So you get all that wired up, okay? Get it playing. Get in your DSP. Use your factory speakers. DSP and listen to the nuances of the factory speakers. What are they lacking? All right? Are you lacking mid bass? Are you lacking bass? Are you lacking highs? Listen to what you've got already. You've already paid for this equipment. It may serve you fine. Listen to it, listen to what's missing. And then when you figure out which channels, because you can turn channels on and off, figure out which channels you need to get the sound you want. And you know what you're missing in the drivers that you're using to produce the sounds that are missing, right? Then you go and replace the speakers that you need to replace to fix those problems, to address those areas. This isn't an SQ setup, okay? Or SQ or standard, normal, average person setup. And add your subwoofer. So you're going to have the amp DSP, or just you're going to have an amp and a DSP on your mids and highs. You're going to have some channel to run back for your subwoofer amp or a powered sub. Whatever you decide to do, get that going on, because the subwoofer is going to bring a lot of low frequencies into the vehicle. And you can take those frequencies out of the door drivers. You can let those drivers that were originally playing 30 hertz and up, let them play 80 hertz and up, and let your subwoofer take over playing up to 80 hertz. That's going to change the way they sound completely. Where they may have been struggling before to play that low information, now they're not going to have to play that information. The subwoofer's doing it. So just by adding a subwoofer, you may be able to keep those original drivers and get the sound you're looking for without spending any more money. But if you decide you need to spend more money, all the stuff that you've got will allow you to build on it. You don't have to replace anything. At this point, everything is just building, not tearing down. So if you decide your highs are crappy, maybe you've got a blown tweeter, maybe your tweeters don't work at all, replacing with a factory similar spec is one possibility. But having said that, I usually recommend a person, if they don't like the way their tweeters sound, but they're working, typically that person's ear is just picky enough that they probably want to go with a silk dome tweeter. Silk dome tweeters are going to tend to have a little bit less top end. They're going to be a little bit smoother and a little bit more of a roll off. Whereas your titanium and metal dome tweeters are going to be a little crisper and a little more punchy at the very top end, a little more sparkly, a little more crisper. So if you really like your tweeters to be defined and pronounced, then something with a metal dome is what you're looking for. But if you're more of a, man, I like to roll that treble knob down just a little bit, just a tiny bit, because the tweeters are too bright, you absolutely are the perfect candidate for silk dome. So when you replace those drivers, replace them with the appropriate type of tweeter that's going to suit your ear. Because everybody hears differently, and the levels of sounds that you perceive are different. What one person thinks is awesome may not be your choice. I'm just giving you some basic knowledge to know which direction to go in depending on how your ear works from your perspective. When it comes to mid drivers, when I say mids, I'm typically talking about the mid and mid woofer combo. So a 6.5 in the door, playing 80 hertz up to wherever you want to stop it at. That's what we're talking about in this scenario. Going with a driver, you want a driver that's got around a 0.700 QTC. QTC? Yeah, QTC. The reason is if you're going to put it in a door, it's not going to have much of an enclosure. It's going to have basically an infinite baffle. And most drivers do have a QTC around 0.700, something in that general area. So you want to avoid putting something like a little woofer in the door that's got a QTC of 0.404. That's not going to play very well at all in your door. And again, these are just tips, okay? If you're going to run a QTC of something that's less than 7, a lot less than 7, like anything less than like 600 and down, the 5s and 4s, you're going to need to put that in its own enclosure to be able to get any real sound out of it. It's going to phase cancel itself really badly if you don't. So depending on whether you're going with SPL or SQ, again, is going to dictate what kind of drivers you use in the doors and the tweeters. If you're going to make your subwoofer station in the back, bust windows loud, you're probably going to want some volume out of your front stage too. In that regard, the best option is usually to go with Pro Audio equipment. Pro Audio specifically is designed to be split up more than your standard car audio. For example, you may have a mid driver that just plays a very narrow band, and another mid driver below it that plays the band that accompanies that band for a wider configuration. Whereas in your typical car stereo speaker, it may cover a huge band, but it has a limit as to how loud it can get because it's covering a huge band. Whereas Pro Audio stuff tends to be a narrower band that it can cover, but it covers that band really well and gives a lot of projection. So that's one of the reasons why you run multiple speakers, multiple size drivers, and multiple amplifiers, and whenever you're doing a high-powered, loud SQ, not SQ, but SPL or SQL system. So knowing what speakers do the jobs is important. Of course, subwoofers, we can get deep into the subwoofer conversation. And that's really a whole nother world. But needless to say, no matter what you're doing, you need to determine how much volume of space and what shape it is that you're willing to give up to house subwoofers. It may be just the area in your trunk. It may be part of your trunk. It may be the area under your back seat in your pickup truck. It may be the area behind the seats in your single cab pickup truck. The point is you need to know the volume of area that's there that you're willing to give up to the bass gods. Sacrifice it to the bass gods. At that point, you then look for drivers and sets of drivers that are capable of playing in their optimally in the volume that you have to work with. So, you've got this much space, and whenever you subtract bracing and the thickness of the wood and all the different elements that reduce the internal volume of the enclosure you're ultimately going to build, you're going to have this much left inside for the speaker to work with. And once you figure all that out, then you want to select drivers that can work with that available airspace. And once you've done that, you get your enclosure built, or you build it yourself. You can use a box builder and BassBox Pro and other software out there to do that, or you can typically call up a shop and have them design a box for you. Call up a car audio shop and say, "Hey man, how much would you charge me to design me a subwoofer box for these dimensions for these drivers?" They'll send you the design. All you do is just build it. There's many ways of accomplishing this, but ultimately you're going to need to put some bass in there somewhere because bass, duh. So that is the thought process I use to think through a system design and the way I prioritize it. from beginning to mostly to the end. You know, don't be scared to jump in, but jump in on pieces of equipment that can be used in any direction you ultimately decide to go. Buy multi-purpose things. You know, um, you might want to buy an amp that's bigger for your sub than what you need and just turn the gain way down on it. That way, if you decide you want to use bigger or a different setup with your speakers, you can still crank that amp a little more. And as long as you don't go past clipping, you're fine. You know, you can turn an 8,000 watt amp down to 1,000 watts and play it on a single 1,000 watt RMS sub. And then later on, when you decide to upgrade, notice I said win because it's almost always a win. You can just turn the gain up a little more. As long as you stay below clipping, it's fine. You get a little more power out of it. You could also use, say, for example, in my scenario, I've got an 8,000 watt amplifier at 1 ohm. Well, if I drop that down to 2 ohm load, typically it pretty much cuts the power in half. So now I'm playing 4,000 watts into 2 ohms or 2,000 watts into 1 ohm. So let's say I bought that amplifier and 1 subwoofer, and at 4 ohms, you know, it would be 1,000 or 2,000 watt amplifier, which is what the sub could handle, 2,000 watts RMS. Then I buy 2 of them, buy another one, right? Now I can get a 2 ohm load. And now this thing's going to put out 4,000 watts. Still matches the subs. 4 subs, 8,000 watts. You see how it builds up? Think about all those things. When you're laying out your system, think about the next step past what you're doing so that you can make the choices that are going to carry over well into the future as you upgrade and change, and also into other vehicles. Universal pieces can move from one vehicle to another. You know, only a few items will get left behind, like dash kits and maybe some speakers that just won't fit in something else. Maybe the speaker wire that you don't pull back out or whatever. Most of it can carry over into your next build. And I've got equipment that I've running in this build that's running 4 builds before it, because why replace what works? Anyway, I hope this was helpful, at least maybe give you some food for thought. If you guys are interested in consulting, I do consult. Just send me an email. The link's down below, and we'll discuss it. You know, if you want to do some consultation, I can. I'll try to help you sort out problems and figure out a direction to go. If you want to donate anything to this channel, for whatever reason, there is a shipping address down below. You can ship it there. I will get it. Whatever it is. Just don't send me any bricks or any dead animals or anything. It's going to the post office. It's, you know, it's on you if you do something stupid. And if you want to help fund my channel and my operation and just help me out in general, Patreon's down below also. Go down there, sign up for Patreon. You can pick one of the tiers that I have, or you can create your own. You can type in any amount that you wish to donate monthly, and that will get done. You know, it's all real simple. Anyway, guys, I hope this was helpful, and I hope I found you having a wonderful day, and the rest of your day and the rest of your life is a good one. Peace.